Hello, George Hepworth, Grover Park Consulting. Welcome back. This video is a change of pace from recent presentations. Microsoft released a new feature in February of 2025 that changes how we can create reusable business logic in Power Platform. Why am I mentioning this now after spending so much time on the SQL Server approach? There are two reasons. Although I'm more confident in the ability of SQL Server stored procs to do a great job, partly because I'm more familiar with them, I am well aware that some developers might prefer other data sources, especially Dataverse tables. Knowing that my technique can work in a Dataverse environment is important. Also, I'm well aware that many Access developers have shied away from PowerApps, and not just because of the licensing costs. It's a common assumption that PowerApps, being known as a low-code developer environment, can't handle more complex tasks. Microsoft is constantly introducing new features and functions in the Power Platform development environment to address those limitations. I urge other Access developers not to sleep on PowerApps. PowerFX Functions. In this video, I will compare the recently introduced PowerFX Functions to the SQL Server stored procedures we've talked about previously in this series. First, we'll learn about the new Power Platform feature called PowerFX Functions. Key features of the PowerFX Functions: they're server-side business logic that runs in Dataverse and only in Dataverse. Flexible execution is supported by parameters, both input and output. Centralized code calling, a similar concept to a standard VBA module and to the SQL Server stored procedure approach I demoed in previous videos. It is currently available in the Power Platform Admin Center as a preview feature. Preview features in the Power Platform environment are available for testing. They will probably change as feedback from early adopters comes in. Other key features. PowerFX Functions replace instant low-code plugins created outside the Power Platform environment. Some developers use, for example, C# to create plugins that they can then use in the PowerApps environment. This eliminates the need for that. They are reusable across multiple Canvas apps and Power Automate flows. They are created with minimal or no coding in the PowerApps portal. They standardize business logic across an organization, and they do require advanced coding knowledge and skills. Access developers sometimes ask why they should bother to explore Dataverse due to its limitations with regard to access. Here's a really good example of one reason you might well decide to take a second look. Before we switch to the Power Platform environment to take a look at a very simple PowerFX formula, I want to warn you that I've only recently begun to learn about them, and I haven't yet developed a fully working example. This will be just a taste, using a basic example from the Northwind Developers application. To work with PowerApps, you would select the Apps option from the menu. Today we're looking at the Discover option. We're looking for the newest feature, which is still in preview. If we select Functions here, it opens the Functions Designer. I've already created one example. This is an extended price calculation for our order detail records. In the Edit window, you can see the display name, extended price, brief description, 3 input parameters, and 1 output parameter. Our input parameters are the unit price as a decimal, the quantity as an integer, and the tax rate as a decimal. The output parameter, the result of our calculation that will be passed back to our PowerApps, is the extended price as a decimal. This is the formula that calculates extended price. It requires the brackets. We assign the value of the calculation to the variable, which is an output parameter from the function. Unit price times quantity plus unit price times quantity times tax rate results in the extended price for that item in our order detail. We can test this new function. I'll provide a unit price, a quantity, and a tax rate. Generates a response. It's coming from the Dataverse environment as extended price response. The payload is extended price and the calculated value. Notice the number of decimal points here. That's the result of the values we put in. Because this is a dollar and cent value, let's go back and edit our function. We want to round the result of our calculation to 2 decimal points for dollars and cents. Notice as I begin to type, I get IntelliSense, which offers some choices that begin ROUN. I still have the red underline, which indicates that I don't have a syntactically valid statement yet. When I complete the correct formula, my highlighted error indicator is gone. I have a syntactically valid statement. That should result in a calculation rounded to 2 decimal places. We'll save it. And again, we can test it. Put in different values. Quantity of 24 and a tax rate of 0.092. Extended price is now $2336.44. I'm not going to try to implement this function in my PowerApps application for a couple of reasons. One is that I just haven't worked with them enough to know how to do that correctly yet. Number two is it is a Dataverse environment feature. It only works with Dataverse tables, to my understanding. And it also requires appropriate Dataverse licensing. The key point, of course, is that it is available now for developers working in the PowerApps environment using Dataverse tables. Where does this leave us? Before I share my final thoughts, let's quickly review what we know about SQL Server stored procedures and about PowerFX Functions. Server-side execution. Both PowerFX Functions and SQL Server stored procs support that. Reusable logic. Again, both support reusable logic. Performance. I already know that SQL Server stored procs offer excellent performance. The reports I can find about PowerFX Functions so far is that they provide good performance. I don't find any benchmarking to suggest otherwise. Still too early in the game, I guess, for that. Debugging. SQL Server stored procs have been around a long time. There are a lot of techniques available for advanced debugging. PowerFX functions are probably similar to other PowerApps functions where debugging is not as robust. Data source. PowerFX functions only operate in the Dataverse environment with Dataverse tables. SQL Server stored procs are limited to SQL Server environments, but any SQL Server or Azure SQL database can support stored procedures, and they are easily transportable across database platforms. Maturity. PowerFX functions are new. They're still in preview, and they can change before they're finalized in a later version. SQL Server stored procs, they are a proven technology. The learning curve. Here's where PowerFX has a slight advantage. They are low-code friendly. There's a lower ceiling in the learning curve, so you're going to become competent more quickly. SQL Server stored procs require SQL Server knowledge, but at the same time, they offer a much higher ceiling as to how far you can go. This is a sort of a feature-by-feature decision matrix. These are entirely my own thoughts. You may disagree. The feature, if you're already in a company or an organization which is heavily invested into the Dataverse ecosystem, PowerFX Functions is a natural addition to that. SQL Server stored procs are not going to be in your wheelhouse. Citizen developer focus. PowerFX Functions fit into that category quite well, I think. SQL Server stored procs are definitely not aimed at the citizen developer. Simple to moderate business logic. Again, PowerFX functions are right there. That's their strength. SQL Server stored procs certainly can handle simple and moderate business logic. It may be overkill in terms of what the upside potential of SQL Server stored procs are, but there's certainly no reason why you couldn't use them for the simplest basic business logic. If your development shop or organization has a low-code, no-code focus, again, PowerFX functions are your cup of tea. SQL Server stored procedures, they can fit there, but they may be, again, overkill for the type of work your shop is going to be doing primarily. On the other end of the scale, if you have an existing SQL Server infrastructure in place, well developed, SQL Server stored procs are best suited for your needs. If you have complex business logic and calculations, again, SQL Server wins out. Advanced debugging and optimization, SQL Server stored procedures. Enterprise grade performance requirement, heavily in favor of SQL Server stored procs. And if instead of a citizen developer focus, you have existing SQL Server development skills, either yourself or in your team within your shop or your organization, that's where SQL Server stored procs come into their own. And finally, just feature by feature advantages, things you might want to consider. Power and flexibility, obviously an advantage to SQL Server stored procs. The ability to return result sets from a call. I don't know if PowerFX functions can bring back an entire table as a result set, or if they're limited to the kind of example that I showed earlier where we're calculating the extended price. I simply don't know the answer to that. SQL Server stored procs certainly can handle those. Advanced tooling. In their infancy, PowerFX functions are not that robust yet. On the other side, we have SQL Server Management Studio and all of the tools that are available in that environment. Profiling, execution plans, and so on. And of course, the enterprise features. PowerFX functions are limited, they're growing. PowerApps, the Power Platform as a whole, is still growing. That is a mainstay of the SQL Server environment. You have always-on availability, backup, recovery, and so on and so on and so on. So that's it. I wanted to give you a quick insight into one of the options that recently opened up something that I didn't even know about when I started on this project, to optimize the design pattern using SQL Server stored procedures. Now that I know about it, I certainly am not convinced that it is in the same category as the SQL Server stored procedures, but it's definitely something that is worth keeping an eye on, particularly with a view to the future. I see nothing but growth and improvement ahead for the Power Platform, and this is a prime example of why that is the case. One more time, a call to my fellow Access developers: don't sleep on the Power Platform, PowerApps, and PowerFX Toolkit. As always, subscribe for more updates in the future. Let me know your thoughts on which approach you prefer. Share your experiences with other technology. You can do that in the comments or directly to me at my email address. Until the next time, hit the like button, subscribe, and stay tuned. I'll see you next time.